Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cyrus Webb Presents. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. So glad you guys could join us once again. We're simulcasting, so we welcome those tuning in on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and on X. Glad you all can be with us. We're about to welcome in our friends over on IG as well, so they can be a part of our conversation. And last, but certainly not least, going to bring in our friends over on Amazon Live, so I can introduce you guys to our next guest. Very excited about this. She's celebrating her debut novel that I had a chance to read, and now I'm going to tell you guys all about it. And we're now live on the Amazon Live platform with Cyrus Webb Presents. If you guys are new to us on Amazon, welcome. Make sure you guys do hit that follow button, either here in this corner or down below. You also will see the book by our next guest. We're so excited to welcome author Anna Barrington to our broadcast today. Anna celebrating the release of her book called The Spectacle. You guys can see it there on Amazon, either the Kindle edition. You guys can go ahead and one click now, or you can get the print edition as well. We're going to talk to Anna not only about the writing of the book, but what it's been like for her to now share these characters with the world. Anna, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Cyrus. I'm really happy to be here.
Look, the pleasure is definitely all mine. So this has been a busy July for you, with it being pub month for you. What has it been like for you, Anna, to have settled into now having your first book out in the world?
It's been incredible. There was a time when I just thought this was going to be shelved and it would be something that would be living in my closet. So I'm just so happy. It feels very surreal to have people actually reading it and talking about the characters who lives for so long just secretly in my head.
Wow. Well, Anna, for those who don't know, we're going to talk around some things to kind of whet their appetite about the book and about you. I mean, the book, as our audience can probably tell by the beautiful cover, centers around art. You've had a love of art that you've been able to be a part of. You know, over the years, I've heard authors talk about writing what you know. What was it like for you to bring your love of art into this novel?
Um, it was a really moving experience and tested me because art has always been very special to me. And the artists that I worked with over time were some of the people who kind of inspired me. Not that we spoke about the fact that I was writing a book, but they were doing their own creative work. And I thought, maybe I can do that too. They just showed me what was possible.
Right.
And their way of working inspired me. So, yeah, it was just sort of a transformative experience.
Yeah. I love the fact that in the book, and again, my having a love of art too, I really, that was another layer that I really enjoyed. I love these characters though, because of course, Rudolph is the character that is the most, I guess, boisterous in the book because of the celebrity and the attention and all of that. But then you have someone like Ingrid that I think a lot of readers will resonate with, someone who sometimes feel like they're in the shadows trying to find their place. What was it like for you to kind of bring these two very different characters to life?
Yeah, so funnily enough, Rudolph, who's the protagonist of The Spectacle, and he is sort of a charming and manipulative art dealer who gets wrapped up in a scam.
Mhm.
He was the easier one for me to write, even though Ingrid was a lot closer to my life and my personality, because I just saw him as like the id, like everything you want to be, but you can't because you're held back by your own morality and your values. But he is just sort of like jumping over every hoop and letting himself run wild. So there was something very freeing about writing a personality like that. Even though he's not a good person, clearly.
Yeah.
Whereas Ingrid was more fly on the wall, and I really wanted the reader to be immersed in the perspective of someone who is very raw and is shocked and sort of titillated by the happenings and the immense sophistication of the art world around her. Because I think I myself was, and any normal person would be.
Yeah. And I think it's so interesting the way you wrote this character because, and I was saying to Anna before we went live here, I love the way you use words in this because you make us feel the emotions. And as you describe things, it's almost like we can see them. And one thing about Ingrid that you help us to see, especially in the dynamics of dealing with Rudolph, and that is we're able to see not only her wanting to be a part of this world, but feeling like an outsider. right? And feeling like, she doesn't belong, and feeling like if she'll ever belong. What was that idea of belonging? What was it like for you to play with in the book?
It's interesting because I think, so much of these emotions that you're working through in the book are maybe just a feeling of your own life that you project into the characters. I'm an expat, and so part of that was, I was feeling nostalgic and wanting to go home
Mm,
during part of the time I was writing this book. But yeah, I mean, the visual part of everything is something I work really, really hard on. Um, because I really feel like a great book, you should just feel completely saturated in the characters' feelings.
yeah.
And so I would just like work it up in my head so that it was like a movie and write it maybe 30 times
Wow.
until every emotion just felt so vivid that it was like I was stepping into their bodies.
Wow, I love that. I want to say hello to Anne Marie, who connected the two of us. Anna, she's joining us over there on Facebook, sending you some love over there. So for our audience that don't know, how did this all begin then? And I mean, we talked about briefly about your love of art. When did you first realize that storytelling was a passion you had as well?
Well, I mean, I think what art and writing and all, creative practices have in common is it's sort of an escape, a portal out of the real world into a fantasy world um, that sort of restores you and feels like an oasis, and then you can come back and you feel at peace and like you've learned something. Um, so I've always wanted to escape into that, from when I was a little kid, reading a book while walking across the street.
Mm, wow. And now here you are going from reading a book to now writing a book that people literally around the world can be able to pick up. Has that sunk in for you yet that now you're one of those authors that you used to read?
It hasn't fully sunk in. It doesn't feel real. It sort of feels like I am scamming everyone.
Oh, that is funny. Well, then, since we're talking about scamming, let's go back to Rudolph then for a, for a second, because I love the fact that with that Rudolph, the way you're able to write him is, and especially in his interactions with Ingrid. One thing I noticed as the book kind of progresses, and is that he allows himself to open up to Ingrid, and she gets an idea of what does drive him and why he does what he does. But it's almost like at times he's trying to convince himself that this is the only way, right? The only way that he matters. I love the idea that I mean, as someone that is seemingly so larger than life, that he also seems to ironically deal with some of the same things that Ingrid may be dealing with. What was it like for you to kind of show that, how, even with all of his attention, that's one of the things that really did propel him?
Yeah, I think one of the things I wanted to explore is that everyone kind of feels like that to an extent. And ironically, the closer, the deeper you get into a social sphere that maybe you've wanted to be a part of for a long time, the more disconnected you feel. I think that is part of like the alienation we feel in the contemporary world. But it's been a part of like all my favorite books which kind of chronicle major changes in society, from French novelists like Proust to Bret Easton Ellis. And I think empathy for characters is always so important, even though Rudolph is a flawed character who is a criminal, really. He he's damaged, but he has room in his heart to love. I think everybody does, and we have a responsibility as writers to show that.
Yeah. Was it also in bringing the art into this as a character, because it almost becomes that as well? That art kind of, I think, again, that's one of the interesting connections I found for myself as a reader, and is the connection between the art, Rudolph and Ingrid, in that for some people, having a certain piece of art, having something makes them feel like they're part of the cool group, or in the club, or at least that validates them. What was it like for you to kind of play with the idea of art and its role in people's lives?
It was really fascinating to me because at the time I was working myself in the art world, and though it was largely a great experience, I was sort of thinking to myself about like the reasons why people buy art, and what it means in a larger culture in which like to buy things is everything, and we do it every day all the time, and we're surrounded by advertising telling us to buy things, and art is merely, you know, the top echelon of that. So I sort of started to think about, you know, why we buy things, what it means to us, how it becomes sort of spiritual, and how it seems to fill our lives with importance. Um, and how everything sort of has become visual in our lives too.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting, and even as you were talking, I thought about a scene that you wrote with another character we meet, Charlie, in the book, Anna, and it made me think about that again, how we then use certain things to justify, you know, what we do and who we are. I want to talk about the way that you're able to write that even in this book, because I mentioned Charlie, of course. Charlie, of course, finds himself in a position where he's kind of in this world too, and
Mhm.
and just like Rudolph is able to make a name for himself, Charlie's in a position where he can make a name for himself. I don't know how much you want to talk about that, but what was that like for you to kind of have Charlie be that individual who's there to try to help us to understand and the world to understand what is real, what is true, and what is right and what is wrong?
Well, I thought it would be interesting early on to create the figure who's kind of a journalist, who's sort of, he doesn't appear all the time, but when he does, it's kind of managing the narrator. And I was sort of thinking of like Balzac, um, where you would suddenly get like a journalist in the middle of the novel, kind of just helping things along. Um, so he is that figure, kind of chronicling things. But I also was thinking a lot about celebrity and how people feel the need to kind of just promote themselves on all platforms publicly, and tell a story about the way they're living and how their friends are living. And Charlie does that publicly by sort of exposing his friend, through his newsletter, which I feel like is a common enough thing today that it wouldn't seem a surprise. But it interests me the way our lives are so exposed.
Yeah, yeah. And I love that because it really does go to that whole all the world to stage. I mean, everyone kind of has their role they're playing, right? And as the reader, we get to see how these different characters kind of play into it. I mentioned earlier about the way you're able to write. And I love the fact that again, we do feel like we're kind of instead of it being in a way where we having to just trust the voice of one character, if it was written in first person, you're able to let us kind of get to know all the characters and kind of make up our own minds. What was that like for you? How did you decide how you wanted to tell the story, Anna?
I think I always wanted to go inside, two characters' heads, one with a lot of power and control,
Mhm,
seemingly, and one without, to have that contrast. And it made sense that the one with a lot of power and agency was sort of a man in the prime of his life with a lot of money.
mhm,
Um, but then I guess, like I said, I like a lot of 19th century French novels, like Madame Bovary or something, where you get sort of a sense of the epic approach to life. You're seeing people in all walks of life. And to do that, you're seeing a tableau, and it's chronicling like the financial and social changes all happening at once in Paris, for example.
mhm.
So I wanted to do that because I feel like America right now is going through this profound transition. We're going to look back and think these were the years in which one system changed into a completely different thing.
Mhm.
And so I felt like in the spectacle, I was sort of journalistically putting things down.
Ah, love that. What character for you? I mean, you talked about how much fun it was in writing Rudolph, but as the story was coming together, I'm curious, Anna, and you and I didn't discuss this before we went live. What character surprised you the most that you created in this book?
Definitely Simone, the celebrity artist
Mm,
who becomes famous, and um, she is best friends with Ingrid, the protagonist. But unlike Ingrid, she's become a celebrity artist
mhm.
and very successful, where Ingrid sort of doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, her trajectory, and I think just her strength and what she was willing to do, to succeed. That was completely unplanned, and I had plotted a lot of other parts of the book, but that took me totally by surprise.
Interesting. I think that's why I think I kept being drawn to Ingrid. I think because I think at times, and I don't think I'm spoiling anything by saying this, and I'll talk broad, but it almost feels like I think a lot of people can relate to this when you are in a position when you're surrounded by things that are attractive and cool and inviting, and you feel like a part of that may rub off on you, but then when you're in that setting, you realize, you know what, maybe I'm better off if it doesn't.
Yeah, maybe I'm good.
I feel like Ingrid is that person that kind of feels like I need to be here to. That's why I guess I mentioned the word belonging earlier, to feel like I belong instead of realizing, you know what, I'm actually okay the way I am.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's important to keep that sense of moral integrity, both as the reader and as the writer, because you don't want someone to get totally swept in. You want them to keep a sense of their inner pride and sense of self. I think it's reassuring to readers that a character has that sort of strength, even though they're tempted.
Yeah. So I asked you earlier about now this experience about the book. I mean, have you gotten used to this part, having total strangers asking you questions about something that you spent so much time with?
I mean, it's so flattering. I never thought anyone would spend time talking about my little book, so I'm really happy to do it every time and grateful.
We have a question over on Amazon from Bobo Go. Wants to know about schooling. Did that take place in New York for you?
Schooling. No, I went to school on Cape Cod High School, and
Okay.
then I did college in St Andrews, Scotland.
Got you. Thank you so much for watching Bobo Go over there on Amazon as well. So I want to talk about now this experience, because now you're in a position that with your first novel out, are you feeling the pressure about a follow-up already? I know the book hasn't been out a full month yet, but people like me are gonna, one thing about readers I've noticed, no matter who we are, we typically will say two things to an author: one, how much we enjoyed the book, and then secondly, when's the next one coming out? I'm not going to ask you when the next one's coming out, but are you excited about what's to come next, or is that part of the anxiousness of the follow-up?
I'm really, really excited. Yeah, I did a good thing. I think I plunged straight into the second one. So I am now sort of midway through that. It's a literary mystery set in New England, completely different. So it's nice to sort of go back and forth between those two worlds.
Well, love that. Any advice you want to share, Anna, for anyone out there who, they may be working on their first book or have an idea that maybe they haven't put to paper yet? Any advice may give them about beginning?
Maybe be open-minded to other people's advice. Be a perfectionist, but also be ready to start a new piece of work.
Wow, love that. Well, Anna, this has been a great conversation with you. Really enjoyed the book, enjoyed the conversation. So glad we had a chance to talk. Again, everyone, Anna Barrington is our guest. The book is called The Spectacle. You can be able to get it, of course, through our friends here on Amazon. You can get it in print or the Kindle edition as well. The audiobook is also, I noticed, available there too. Anna, how can our audience stay connected with you?
You can go to my website, annabarrington.com, or follow me on Instagram, Anna Barrington Campbell.
Love it. Anna, congratulations again. Looking forward to our next chat together.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Cyrus.
More than welcome. And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Cyrus Webb Presents. Until next time, you all make it a great one. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.